I'm hot and cold, flex player for Mirage Esports, and you're watching
The Rebirth of Matthew Hotancold Stevens, a North American League analysis.
What the heck went on? How are you even here right now? And why are you so much better than before, man? You're a whole new player now.
Hotancold played Tier 1 Rainbow Six Siege for nearly 5 years on the Dark Zero roster and its previous iterations, starting with Flipside Tactics, moving on to SK Gaming, and then eventually becoming Dark Zero. In February of 2021, he would be dropped and then moved to Mirage.
Being on Hard Breach on that type of team like Dark Zero or even SSG is very hard to find your frags. You know, you have some of the best entries in the game on your team. So usually either you're in a 1v5 or you're in a 5v1 and you don't do anything, you know?
So let's go back a ways and take a look at some of Hotancold's performances on Dark Zero, where he played primarily Hard Breach and support. This is Pro League Season 10 for North America. Dark Zero Esports, Hotancold's team, placed number 1 in the division, and Hotancold put up a 1.04 rating. He went even on KD. He had 21 plants, the most in the league, and he played Thermite, Hard Breach Operator, and Maestro, an Anchor Operator. And then we have the Season 10 Finals, where Dark Zero placed second. Hotancold put up a 1.14 rating, tied for the highest on his team, playing once again a Hard Breach Operator, Hibana, as well as the Maestro. He went +7 on KD, and he had 3 plants. And at the US Nationals 2019, the finals, Dark Zero only placed 7th, with Hotancold putting up a fairly poor performance, 0.79 rating, -7 KD. And of course, this is only over the course of a few games, as you can see by the stats. And again, playing Hard Breach Operator Hibana, and then another Anchor Operator Smoke. And then at the 6th Invitational 2020, they placed 5th, and Hotancold put up again the second best performance on his team. He went +5 on KD, +4 on entry, put down 19 plants, which again looks to be the 4th most of the top 8 performers here. But here you can see he played more than anything else Buck as well as the Maestro. So again, the Anchor Operator. But I assume he played the most Hard Breach here, because curiously there's not a Hard Breach Operator in anyone's most played attacker. So I would assume it was him, but he did play more Buck than anything else, which is a frag competent operator. And finally, we have Pro League Season 11, which was the last season before the switch to the North American League format. Here, Dark Zero placed 3rd, with Hotancold again putting up a positive rating of 1.01. He went slightly negative on KD, and he went even on entry. He put down a good number of plants, but it seems to be Mint who has now taken over the primary planting position. So for a little bit of review, I have the 5 events that I just went over here. Hotancold achieved a rating of 1.04, 1.14, 0.79, 1.08, and 1.01, giving him an average rating over these events of 1.01. Dark Zero's placement within each event was 1st, 2nd, 7th, 5th, 3rd, giving them an average placement of 3.6. And Hotancold's rating within his team was the 4th best, 2nd, 5th, 2nd, and 3rd, putting him at an average of 3.2 out of 5. So as for the rating, pretty good, above 1. Again, support player, probably better than you would expect. Team placement within events, pretty solid. Some are better than others. 7th out of 8 is a bit lackluster. These are all out of 8 except for SI, which is out of 16. And the level of competition here is pretty high. So again, 3.6 is something to be proud of. Season 10 is 8 of the best teams in America. Same thing with the USN 2019 finals and Season 11. The Season 10 finals saw the top 2 teams from each of the 4 major regions, and SI had 16 of the best teams from around the world. And then as for his rating within his team, an average of 3.2 puts you just above the bottom 3rd of your team on average, which is probably higher than you'd expect for the support player. If your IGL was also on somewhat of a supportive role, you'd probably expect your IGL and your other supportive player to be the 4th and 5th rated players, which is sort of the case for Dark Zero, which makes the 3.2 average fairly impressive. So as a slight break from the hard statistics that I've been going over, let's take a look at Dark Zero's roster moves over time. Here we have the SK Gaming roster, which was picked up by Dark Zero in November 2018. They would, in February 2019, drop Pojo Man, and then in March 2019, they would replace him with BC, who was at the time their coach. They put him in a playing position. And then in May 2019, they would pick up Hyper to replace Jarvis. And this is the roster from the first stats that we went over, the Season 10 stats. And then November 2019, they would replace Nyx with Skies and BC with Eclipse. BC moving back onto the coaching role since they've now found a suitable replacement. And this is the roster they would stick with for well over a year. And it's also the roster that they took to the US Nationals and the 6th Invitational, as well as the roster that they would bring into Pro League Season 11. All the while, you can see that Mint and Hot and Cold were on the roster all the way up until here, which we'll cover in a little bit. So Hot and Cold was a bit of a rock during this time, always the support player, always there, and usually putting up good stats. And so this brings us into the North American League, the modern era of Tier 1 Siege in North America. This is the US Division 2020 Stage 1. It started on June 22nd and ran to July 22nd, so this puts us about 10 months prior to now. Let's look at the stats. We have Hyper here, Hot and Cold's teammate, top rated player in the league by far. And now how far down do we have to go to find Hot and Cold? Well, we have to go all the way down here, the bottom 6. He put up a 0.84 rating, went minus 26 on KD, minus 4 on entry, and put up 11 plants, which is tied for the 5th most in the league. And again, he's playing Habana, his classic hard breach operator, but he's been playing a lot of Jaeger, interesting. And as you can see here, there is a lot of Jaeger. A lot of people play more Jaeger than anything else, but I would still classify his play as that of a support player. Next up, we have the 6th August Major Qualifier. The participating teams were the Sonics, Mirage, the team that Hot and Cold would eventually join, Dark Zero Esports, his current team, and then Tempo Storm. Taking a look at the stats here, we have Hyper, once again, top rated player. And now we have Hot and Cold as the 6th highest rated player. 1.04 rating, even on KD, minus 5 on entry, 66% cost, and 8 plants, the 2nd most in the event. And we see him back on the Thermite and also playing another support operator, the Mute. And now we have the August Major itself, which consisted of Dark Zero, TSM, Space Station, and Oxygen. And in the previous two, we saw Hyper being the #1 player, definitely overshadowing his teammate, Hot and Cold, and, well, the rest of the players in the league and events. But now we have Hot and Cold, MVP, highest rated player in the event. 1.23 rating, plus 8 on KD, plus 9 on entry, 81% cost, 13 plants, tied for the most in the event. And again, playing Maverick, which is still a hard breach operator, but definitely a more frag-oriented one than Thermite especially, and probably even compared to Habana. And then Jaeger, a fragging op. So just as earlier, he is still performing a support role, but he seems to be coming into a more aggressive role, and it is working out well for him in this event. Next up, we have the US Division Stage 2 of 2020. We got Achieve taking over the first spot, but Hyper still way up there, top 5, 1.16 rating. And for Hot and Cold, we once again have to go down here, bottom 8. A little bit better than Stage 1, but not much. 0.89 rating, minus 29 on KD, minus 1 on entry, 62% cost, 15 plants, the 2nd most for the stage, to be expected. And now Ace is a part of the game, so we see him switching over to it, and this is the most frag-oriented of the hard breachers yet introduced into the game, and as well as playing on the Jaeger role. So this is sort of a disappointing performance, I'd say. Playing on the Ace, yeah, you're trying to get the walls open more than anything else, but you also have the best gun on attack, and then you're also playing Jaeger, one of, if not the best guns on defense. So a bit lackluster of a performance here. And now we have the 6th November Major. Once again, Space Station, TSM, Dark Zero, and Oxygen all went head-to-head. And once again, Hot and Cold didn't do too hot. Bottom 5 for the event out of 20. 0.87 rating, minus 18 KD, minus 5 on entry, 59% cost. And here he played mostly Ace and Maestro. Both definitely support operators, but both definitely have very good guns. So we might have liked to have seen him put up a little better performance in the kill and rating department. Here we have the US Division 2020 Finals. The same 4 teams as the August and November majors, Dark Zero, TSM, Oxygen, and Space Station. Notable of this event and the November major is that they were played on LAN as opposed to the August major, which was played online. So looking into the stats. Now we have a little bit of a boss up from Hot and Cold. He went from bottom 5 to top 5. 1.1 rating, plus 5 on KD, even on entry, 70% cost. And the Maestro again, and back to the Hibana now instead of the Ace. Now for a bit more review, we have the 6 events and leagues that I just covered. Stage 1, the August Major Qualifier, the August Major. Stage 2, the November Major, and the US Finals. So Hot and Cold's ratings were 0.84, 1.04, 1.23, 0.89, 0.87, 1.1, and this averages out to be a clean 1.0. Nothing fancy. Dark Zero's placement in each of these events was 4th, 1st, 3rd, and 2nd, which averages out to be 2nd overall. Do take that with a bit of a grain of salt because some of these are out of 8, being stage 1 and stage 2. The rest are out of 4. But the August Major Qualifier, I would say, skews it even further because you already placed above all the teams that you beat here. The August Major Qualifier consisted of the 4th place team, 5th place team, and 6th place team from the US division, and then the top team from Canada. So you already outranked the 5th and 6th team here, only to beat them again here. So this one brings up their average a bit, but pretty good overall. They qualified and then managed to win this, and then they won this. And they didn't win either of these, but of course they didn't come last in any of the majors or anything. So again, I'd be pretty happy with the 2 average, but again, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. And then Hot and Cold's rating within Dark Zero, he was the 5th, 4th, 1st, 5th, 5th, and 1st. A little bit inconsistent, no 2s or 3s, only tops and bottoms, and the 1/4. Averaged out to be 3.5. A bit worse than his previous average in this category, which was a 3.2. Not that much worse, but the way this average works, I think it's a little bit worse than it might seem. And you're not terribly happy with the 3/5. Although as I stated earlier, as a support player, it's not the worst thing in the world. And the 2 first places do sort of make up for it, almost. But as you can see, a little bit worse overall and a lot less consistent than the last time we looked at the averages. And so this brings us to the end of Hot and Cold's time on Dark Zero. In February of 2021, he would be dropped for NJR. Now, what leads a team to dropping a player? To my mind, there's 3 main reasons. 1, the player simply just not performing, which clearly wasn't the case here. He had a few poor showings, but he had enough good showings to make up for it, with an average of 1.01 and then 1.0 between the 2 averages that I showed. That basically comes out to be just right at 1. Nothing wrong with that for a support player. Reason 2, you find a player that's good enough that you just have to pick them up, and then you just replace somebody on your team. They did this in the past with Hyper. He was just an incredible fragger, and they found an opportunity to pick him up, so they picked him up, and then it was just Jarvis who had to take the boot. And I'm not sure this is the case either. NJR is a good player. He showed that for sure in his rookie season, but I don't know if he was good enough to warrant picking up on a team that was so well established. Although maybe. And then reason 3, you just need a change. And I think, if I remember correctly, I heard one of the members of Dark Zero or their coach or someone from the organization talking about this being the reason. They felt they were in a little bit of a slump, which isn't really shown by their recent performances. Although, perhaps maybe their very, very recent performances, because they didn't win either the November Major or the US Finals, getting 2nd and 3rd place. But they did win the August Major, they won Stage 2, so they were doing well, but maybe they thought that that was some sort of sharp decline. So anyways, they thought it was time for a change, and so it was Hot and Cold that they decided to cut.
Is it a redemption tour? Is there something that you personally want to prove this season to everybody that's out there? Because you've been definitely showing it every play day.
I mean, I don't really want to prove it to everyone. I just wanted to prove it to the coaches on, Dark Zero. I think they never really gave me a chance to shine, and I think they realize that now. So, I mean, that was my goal coming into the season.
Dark Zero decided to drop their support player, Hot and Cold. Not long after, Mirage decided they would pick up Hot and Cold and put him on a flex role. So let's see how that worked out for him. These are the stats from the North American League 2021 Stage 1. Hot and Cold would achieve a 1.23 rating, go plus 25 on KD, and plus 4 on entry, 66% cost, a nearly 1.0 KPR. He would pull out 3 1vx clutches and still get a plant down. Now these stats look a lot different from any of the stats we've seen before. Very few plants, only 1. He's usually one of the people putting down the most plants, but now he's one of the people putting up the most frags. It looks like he has the second most frags in the entire league. He has the second highest KPR in the league. And if it weren't for an insane performance for Grixer, he would have been the best player in the league. There's a bit of a gap between him and Eclipse even here, his former teammate. Now let's take a look at some of Hot and Cold's performances throughout the season. So here we have Mirage's first game of the season, which is against Dark Zero, his former team. They ended up losing in the 15th round, the very final round of the game possible. Now notice here how many multi-kills Hot and Cold gets. He gets a 2k, a 2k, a 3k, another 2k, and then I think he gets one more. And another 2k. So he has a lot of very impactful rounds. That puts, 11 of his kills within 5 rounds. And he actually had 6 others. So he had 6 other rounds where he got 1 single kill. And if you just look at the performance here, he did far better than anyone else on his team. He was pretty well the reason they took it all 15 rounds. Whereas on Dark Zero, everybody except for NJR went at least even, put up a solid performance. And now I have a clip from the round where he got a 3k. Let's check it out.
Nevertheless, it's just cool to see her start getting worked in, especially since she is the only defender right now that has a DMR at her disposal. Just a really, really cool kit to have implemented into Siege overall. And what a play from Hot and Cold. Read like a book. Nitro cell underneath. Hyper's not even concerned with the angle, but he needs to be, because if it's hot or cold, it's definitely all hot right now. This guy is on fire. Nick still gets the double kill. Finally shut down from NJR as they're prioritizing Sunrise. They drop inside of the couch as well. But Hot and Cold deals with that situation. All of a sudden it's down to NJR, but he's done and dusted behind the bar. Mirage are making coastline defense look so easy right now.
Next up, we have a 7-3 loss to Oxygen. This is probably one of Hot and Cold's worst performances of the season. As you can see here, he gets a 2k, a 2k, and one more 2k. This puts 6 of his kills in 3 different rounds, and he only actually gets 8 kills in total. So he gets 2 other rounds where he gets a single kill, meaning that of the 10 rounds, he only actually got 1 or 2 kills in 5 of them. 5 rounds where he didn't get a kill. And he went even on KD here, but he didn't go positive on rating. So not a great game. And now we have another 7-3 loss, this time to TSM. This is Mirage's 3rd loss in a row, but would be their last loss from the season. They would win out from here. We have a 3k from Hot and Cold, a 2k, a 2k, a 2k, and another 2k. Looking at the scoreboard here, 13-7, by far the only decent performance even on his team, and by far the best in the entire lobby, although of course it wasn't enough to get them the win. So let's take a look at a 3k round.
Swing, it's sloppy aim on both parts, but Mark walks away with the kill. 2 more though for Mirage as it gives them the advantage. Now Bolo down gives MRG, as they're listed on the right side of your screen, perfect opportunity to win this one. Ultimate disrespect as Hot and Cold with the pistol collects 2 kills.
Here we have Mirage's first win of the season, which was a 7-4 against Beast Coast. Going down the rounds, we have a 4k from Hot and Cold, a 3k, which involved a 1v1 clutch, a 2k, and then finally one more 2k. He goes 13-7 with a 1.46 rating. Again, easily the best on his team, but he now has some teammates that are actually putting up decent numbers. And I was going to show the 4k from this game, but it's not very impressive. All 4 of the kills come from him rappelling outside Jacuzzi wall and the defenders peeking him, and most of the action is off screen, so I think I'm going to skip this one. Mirage then defeated Xset with an 8-7 scoreline. In the first round, Hot and Cold gets a 2k, and in the second round, he gets a 4k. But for the remaining 13 rounds of the game, he only gets 4 more kills and never more than 1 in a single round. Which leads to perhaps his weakest performance I did show a game earlier where he had a negative rating, but this is actually the only game in the season where he goes negative on KD. He goes 10 and 12. With the rest of his team putting up decent performances, some better than his and some worse than his, but still enough to get them the win in the end. So let's take a look at the 4K round from this game.
Filthy's early push gets shut down by Hotancold. So there you have it. The Frost has been able to make an impact right now on the main stairs. Mirage have forfeited logistics and forfeited it as best as they can. Another kill for Hotan, that's his 4th. Nobody so far, by the way, has a kill on Mirage except for him. Well, drip down to loading. There's a kill from somebody else on Mirage, but it's a 4K for Hotancold. Good Lord.
In their next match, Mirage defeated Space Station 8-7. Going down the rounds, Hotancold got a 2K, a 2K, a 2K, another 2K, and finally a 4K. Just like in a lot of previous games, easily the best performance on his team, the only one who went positive on KD or rating. And Mirage's victory in this game is in no small part due to Hotancold, obviously based on the scoreboard. But as you'll see in the clip I'm about to show here, they were down 2-4 on man count in a round where Space Station had match point. Mirage had to win that round and the next round. Hotancold's teammate is on less than half health, and well, just check out the clip.
Study trying to see if SSG are pushing from that angle. He's not. Hotancold needs some help by the back of bar. He takes down one, pops up, looks the wrong way. Damage coming out. Hotancold, are you kidding me?
Next, we have a 7-2 victory versus Disrupt. We have a 2K from Hotancold here, and then a 3K. And really overall, not a very flashy performance. He had almost a 1.0 rating. He went +1 on KD, +2 on entry. But his cost was very low, only 44%. And it's actually Nyx and Loading here who are pulling the hard carry. Dream and Benji not doing too well, but Hotancold's other two teammates really showing up here. And the 3K clip from this game isn't particularly exciting. None of Hotancold's 3 kills are shown on screen, so I'm just going to skip it and let's move on to their last game. Another 7-2 victory for Mirage, this time over the Sonics. Going down the round count, we have a 4K from Hotancold here. He plants the diffuser and clutches a 1v3. And he gets a 3K here. So again, only 2 rounds where he pulls multi-kills. But still a very solid performance. 1.54 rating, +3 on KD, +1 on entry, 67% cost. And let's show the final clip here. And then we'll move on to just a few more stats and then some closing thoughts.
For both teams, Mirage trying to push up main stairs, and that's a terrible idea. It'll get completely destroyed, and it'll get worse as they double down on it. Hotancold, the last attacker after a blunder by the rest of his team. He'll creep his way into Master. Nice lineup on Rexon. Down he goes. Diffuser retrieved. Super on low HP. Grixer's going to have to win the gunfight. And against Hotancold, one of the hottest hands in this season, with the AK-12, there is no guarantee for success on the Sonic side, despite how terribly Mirage executed that. Post-plant, in a matter of moments here, Hotan will drop to play from below. He's got information on the main stairs. They know that Super is playing prone on that staircase, and it seems like Super's aware that Hotan has dropped because of the way he's playing. So Super's going to try and cut off the rotation on the staircase while Grixer goes for the defuse, or the disable. Here it goes. Disable starting. Will Hotan have line of sight? Yes, he will, but Grixer gets away. And he's got a peek now. He has to take the challenge, but he'll lose the challenge. Hotancold is about to clutch this one up for his team. And Super, he doesn't even have time. Hotan's already won this. Mirage take yet another round on Attack of Clubhouse. The score is now 4-1.
Oh, good Lord.
I do want to note that in all of the spreadsheets I'm about to go over, all players that aren't in the North American League currently are not shown on here. So players like Canadian, Biologic, and Slashug aren't shown. These are the stage ratings from the 3 stages of the North American League that we've had so far. They're sorted in descending order based on the 2021 Stage 1 performances. So as we saw earlier, Hotancold gets 2nd place here in rating with a 1.23. In Stage 2 of 2020 at a 0.89, and in Stage 1 of 2020 a 0.84, giving him an uptrend overall. His weighted average, 1.05. As you can see, nothing too remarkable. Better than a lot of other players, but not one of the absolute highest ones here. But we do see the absolute highest differential from him here. And that speaks a bit to his improvement in performance when he moved from Dark Zero to Mirage. The 0.84 improvement up to 1.23. Then we have the ratings from the 3 majors from 2020. The US Finals, the November Major, and the August Major. They're ranked in descending order based on the US Finals rating performance. Then we have the 3 ratings averaged, and here we have them averaged but with weight distributed, such that the more recent events are weighted more. In both of these, Hotancold is in about the top 1/3 of players. And we also see the second highest differential coming out for Hotancold here. He went down from a 1.23 to a 0.87, but he did bring it back up to a 1.1 for the final major. The only person with a higher differential was Fultz, who had a true boss down from a 1.29 to a 0.87 performance. Then we have combat-related stats from Stage 1 of 2021. Here we have kills and deaths. This is organized by kill-death differential in descending order. So Hotancold had the second most at 25, 1.37 ratio, as well as having the second most kills total in the league. And I'm only showing the top certain number here. It went up to 15, but if there were ties, that would make the number greater than 15. I cut them off. So here, the ties would have led to like 16 players, so I just cut it down to 12. This one didn't have any ties that changed anything, so I kept it at 15. And then below, you see how many representatives there are from each team. And you'll note that in each of these, Mirage has only one, and it's always Hotancold. Here we have opening kills and death stats. Hotancold is the 8th best. He went +4, having 14 kills and 10 deaths. Then we have kills per round, or KPR. Grixer had an astronomical 1.05. Hotancold next up, 0.99, almost cracked that 1.0 mark. Headshot percentage, not terribly important, but he's still on here. He's the 10th highest, tied with Tomas. And then we have the number of appearances players have on here. Only Fultz, Grixer, Hotancold, and Rampy appeared in the top whatever slots. And then team appearances again, Mirage 4, all of them are Hotancold. Next we have NAL Season 1 of 2021 support stats. Cost isn't strictly a support stat, but it entails a lot more than just combat, so I somewhat arbitrarily put it here. Survival, 1vx's, and 1vx's also are sort of a combat stat, but some people consider it a support stat because it involves clutching, so take it as you will. And then plants and disables. Not super notable for Hotancold here. The only time he appears is on 1vx's, which he's tied in first place for with 3. What is a bit notable is that he was always in the past a support player, and now he's not really making waves in any of the support stats. Not a lot of plants or disables. And disables, this is all of the players that have any number of disables, 2 or 1. And this stat isn't terribly significant. The numbers are so small. But he's also, I would like to point out, not in the top 14 for cost. So although he had a very large impact, that impact was condensed to a relatively small number of rounds. And now just a few more things I want to point out about Hotancold's performance on Mirage. Clearly it was a very impressive performance. He placed 2nd in the league on rating and was easily the best player on his team. But in order to illustrate how much better he was than every other player on his team, all players that placed in the top 10 on rating had at least one other player from their team that placed in the top 20. This is a characteristic of all teams except for XSET and Beast Coast, who didn't have players in the top 10, although XSET did have 2 players in the top 20. Hotancold placed 2nd, and the next highest rated player on his team was Benji at 22nd place, and this is out of 45, so barely cracking the top half of the division. Also notable of Hotancold's performance, he had only one single game where he didn't get at least a 3K in a round. Even Grixer and Eclipse, the 2 other highest rated players in the league, were too shy of getting at least one 3K in each game. Additionally, Hotancold had only one game where he went negative on KD, and I believe this is only shared by Grixer. Eclipse was too shy of going even or better on every game. And so in conclusion, just a very impressive performance by Hot and Cold, and honestly by Mirage for the most part, ending up in 3rd place with almost an entirely new team and winning their last 5 games after a 3-loss streak. So if all of the members of Mirage can show up simultaneously in games in the future, I think they're going to be a very impressive team to watch and definitely one to look out for. So was it a mistake for Dark Zero to drop Hot and Cold? We'll have to see what happens in the future, but for now, the answer seems to be a resounding yes. Considering Dark Zero placed 6th, while Mirage placed 3rd, and the fact that now that he was given the chance, Hot and Cold has proven himself to be one of the best players in North America, and perhaps one of the best players in the entire world.
My guy, big win, another crazy performance. I mean, you've come a long way.